the winning Orc list, Lukas Troller's 5-0 War Horde list had Dicing Death on GT. So here we have it up here for those who are watching visually as the event. We have Dice. Hey, it was pretty nice. It was a pretty legit event because you had to pay like $100 to get into the event, I think it was. So even though it was only 4 players, you know, everybody was definitely wanted to be there, was trying to perform. It wasn't just just because, you know, sometimes people go, well, the size of the event. Well, sometimes there's sharks in there, and it seemed like there was other shark tanks. Interesting matchup that was missed that I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to see as well would be this Dark Angels matchup, who also went undefeated at the event and didn't match up with the Orc players at the end. So that's kind of cool. Would have been interesting to see as well. But one thing to say is shout out to War Games Live. So check them out on YouTube. They had this. You can go. It was on day 2. It was the last game of the event. You can watch this live for some peak performances and moments and, you know, deployments and such. But of course, I'm going to cover how some point the big points in that game without giving a entire play-by-play and talking your ear off. Just enough so people understand some context and how close it was, and very exciting. It was one of the best games I watched personally, and I was like getting like worked like tense. War boss, what would I do here? So I know everybody feels that kind of way, but we're gonna walk through it here as well because it's gonna be a great time. Before I look through his path to victory, shout out to chat's going off right now. We also had his list. So let's take a look at his list. A lot of it is what we would consider meat and potatoes, consistent, but some tech here that I think he found very valuable and important, and something that I've shown and talked about here and used myself that isn't necessarily an auto take, but it's known throughout the Orc community. Yet we've seen Lukas using it here. So we have the nice meat and potatoes of a beast boss. I think he actually utilized his beast bosses quite well within the patience, which we'll talk about as we looked at through his games and everything. Is he would, you know, with the beast boss, how efficient it is outside of the wall, especially in War Horde. It's one of the few Orc units because of its strength threshold, the amount of bodies, the beast boss himself allow it to actually do something non-wall turns, which were very important in the final matchup of this game, where you've seen a lot of people just whiffing back and forth. It was very hilarious to see. But the beast boss is cool because he can either go early or go late, so very valuable. I always got to bring at least one, and so did this get. Then we have the Big Mac with Follow Me Lads with the Drilla and Custom Mega Blaster. Of course, that's going to be alongside Ghazghkull Thraka. Those guys just deployed on the table, just happy to be out there. Very important. They're going to pop Here We Go on their go turn. Very important, very, very vital unit. I love it how it's been swinging the game, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. We have a basic mech, as I was saying, for the tech pieces that were a little bit uncommon or under kind of appreciated sometimes. The basic mech utilizing a truck with 12 tank busters inside of it, right? So this baby mech is really intended to walk around, sometimes do actions, sometimes assist you in other secondaries, like he counts as a whole unit for display of might, for example, and such like that. So the mech on his own will follow the truck, get low out from it, and then be poking it for its +1 to hit using firing deck. It really makes for an anti-infantry, anti-elite infantry, or sometimes mob unit that can shoot out of the truck, peek corners, threaten enemy firing lanes, and it seemed to be very, very important in all of his matchups and in the final games that he ended up playing as well. I've loved the piece, right? A lot of times people just think of the flash kits shooting or the tank busters jumping out and shooting. When you incorporate the mech, you're not only hitting on forwards, but your unit's safe for any return fire, and it's easier to cut angles and get developed speed and such, and utilize the speed of the truck. So I really, really like that combo, but seeing it in War Horde was kind of surprising, right? So even though I use it in Dread Mob and I use it in Cult of Speed, War Horde is something that people are not typically teching for that kind of combo anymore. We've seen it early in the meta. Lukas Troller also, we've seen him early in the meta when you could run 6 trucks and 3, what was it, a different Orc transport before I got a Codex. So very familiar with Lukas overall, how very, very efficient of a player he is. So I like that he was using that piece, and I think that the Orc community should very considerate, right? If you're going to pay a lot of the time, not everybody has to do this, or has to, like I'm saying, has to do this, but we'll develop, especially on GW layouts specifically, because how big the firing lanes are and important, they kind of always have to interact with them and threaten your enemy with them. Taking tank busters with a mech versus just taking them on their own, or bringing a third unit, or bringing a character, is something we should be very much considering. Then we have the War Boss and the Painboy with Cunning Babru, which I absolutely love. Like I talk about whenever I talk about War Horde or running this kind of meat and potatoes archetype where you have multiple multiple mobs of boys. The Painboy unit being less, threatening in this case than Gaz's mob means that it's going to definitely be less of a priority on the enemy, but definitely going to always go on the same go turn as Gaz. Meaning if the enemy can't or doesn't commit to this unit fully, it can fall back, interact with the enemy again, regrow some more boys, swap more objectives. Gets very potent. So then you have a sense of urgency on the enemy. Do I fight the Gaz unit and absolutely overkill it, or do I try to kill both of them to diminish it? It's a lot for anybody to choose in real time. So a lot of time it's hard to get that custom, that kind of brutal, but I definitely appreciate it and always try to bring it if I can. And these like this kind of archetype where the War Horde is trying to have its go turn and you have another big asset because you're very elite or low unit count to a certain degree on this list. Not that much, but 4 orcs. Then you have, of course, the 10 snaggers, the 220-man unit of boys, 2 trucks, and a battle wagon for the transport roles on how it's going. Very consistent for what we're seeing and what I would enjoy too. One, if you're going to bring one wagon, typically 2 trucks for SWAT teams, like I said, for the firing deck of the truck, for just playing with your snaggers more efficiently because they want to play independently. Trucks are always invaluable in that case. 1 Gretchen unit. If you can bring 2, people like to do it, but you can get away with just 1 because the Mandos. So the Mandos, you can split them into 2 units. You can keep 1 unit back, 1 unit forward, and in some cases, people will use that second unit to screen. In some cases, they'll use 1 to be a throwaway trash unit or keep interacting and scoring or blocking people just standing in ways. And I think people underappreciate the staying power of commandos when the enemy really doesn't feel like investing into them, which happens a lot in a lot of games. And you've seen them also if you're watching War Games Live, or if you start to use them in their 5-man units. They don't just fall over necessarily because the enemy can't always get enough firepower on them or doesn't want to get enough firepower on them and end up risking getting charged. So it's pretty awesome. Then we have 3 5-man units of Stormboy. They seemed very valuable from the games watching live. And when he was talking about it himself, he really felt it, the 5-man Stormboys, from what I heard from his game, right? And shout out to Lucas. If I can get a interview with him or, to any degree conversation with him, shout out to the chat. If you guys reach out to him, let him know. That'd be awesome. If he's willing, if not, I totally understand. But I thought it was just awesome to see him play and how he pulled the games through with this list. But he, from what I heard and what I understood, really found the 3 5-man units of Stormboys invaluable, which is somewhat of an adjustment to what Orks had been naturally doing. Now, don't kid me, you gets, right? I know a lot of you guys out there have cut at least 1 of your Stormboy units, if not 2 of your Stormboy units from your list to just fit more other stuff onto your list. And I think it's very nice that he just paid for the 5, and it seemed very important because you need the speed of these guys that they bring, because once everybody starts getting stuck in, the 20-man mobs and the trucks are kind of moving around, the field's really clogged up. Other infantry aren't really going to get past these big combat mosh pits, and you still get advance and charge from it, access from grenades, getting in the way. It just becomes very interesting and helpful more late games, as long as you don't throw them away all the time too early. Sometimes people get too eager with them and they die too early. Then we have the 2 Tankbustas, like I said, which were in a truck. Boom. So Beast Snaggle use boss unit in a truck, 2 Tankbustas, and then the next standing next to a truck, and then centralized battle wagon with a 20-man unit of boys with the Painboy and the War Boss. Typically, that's how the transport loadout went. So let's take a look at his path to victory, because I think that's what people really want to see, and then we can end it with the great orc on orc matchup at the end, where I had a little bit of we're going to talk through a little bit of that. And yeah, of course, check out War Games Live. Such an asset to the community. Shout out to Joe. He's such a great dude. And he was giving really good insight as someone who doesn't play Orc, but is a fan of Orcs. He actually has a good head on his shoulders for what's going on, which is not surprising considering you play Space Wolves, right? So he understands combat, what's going on. So great job to him, as his commentary was actually pretty solid, right? I'm not going to say actually, because we know he's solid, but to hear other people talk about Orcs is always reassuring to us as Orc players, right? We feel seen. So let's get into the path to victory. So as his first game, and I think also someone's saying in chat that there was a second game on War Games Live with Joe. With Troller as well. I didn't see that one, but that's fantastic if you can check that one out too in the chats, or leave it in the chat of the video. Let people know, spread the love. And if you do go check out War Games Live, say WAAAGH, or leave a like, or say what's up for him, so he knows what's up with the great WAAAGH, that we own him. So he says, is it a horde meta? It's funny that the enemy put that. I thought that was funny to put forward considering what this matchup was going into Lucas. So he went two captains with jump pack, 2 librarians, a lieutenant, and then Vulcan Heast. 2 units of tactical marines. What they come with? Looks like they came with multi-meltas. Okay, makes sense for salamanders, right? And then 2 units of rhinos, followed by 1 unit of company heroes. Very consistent unit we're seeing brought with the Space Marines nowadays. 1 unit of devastators. Okay. 1 land raider with the flamers, of course. Predator annihilator, a scout squad, 2 big bricks of vanguards with the jump pack with the hand flamers, which is interesting because when they get close to you, they get additional strength on them. They have dev wounds potential on their units, so good multi-phase damage. And what's very important in this matchup is they want to meet you and bang it out in the middle. And when you do make enough contact with enough of their assets, it takes them too long to kind of burn you away sometimes. So if you let them get the jump on you, and they have really efficient matchups, like they disembark you and then charge you and melt and flame your guys getting out of the wagon, of course, they can definitely devastate you. But if you play the aggressive style that you can see Lukas playing when you see him live, you can see that you can typically get the first punch on the enemy, clean some of their more important assets like that land raider, which would be annoying to be in combat with, and pull whale out of your boys. Shoot through them real quick with maybe Gaz, for example. Take the mid table. Make sure the game's always happening on the other side of either the midway point or past it. And when you watch Lukas play, whether it's I've seen him in the past or we were seeing here at this event, he always makes sure that even if it's early game and he's losing bodies, that there's some kind of interaction of holding that mid-table line and not allowing the enemy engage him on their terms, which is always important for us on Orks, right? There's a risk that they could, which was very important as we look at his later matchups, that he's aware of them, but he was mentally understanding when he had to be very aggressive and sometimes, and I've seen that felt this way with this list as well. So 84-point win, W there. Great job to that match, to that one. Not easy because managers can hit you pretty hard when you get there, so you don't want to dwindle too early. Then we go into the Grey Knight. So he has 3. Oh, they're playing that the Warbane. So very, very potent in death with the full rerolls for attachment. And he has a bunch of Brotherhood librarians. They get their dev to their mortal wounds off when they really jump out and blow you up. Typically, that's kind of like their version of anti-tank to a certain degree. I mean, these Nemesis Dread Knights can pop trucks, but I'm saying for like a battle wagon, not too efficient at popping a wagon with most things on a typical Grey Knight list. Then we have Castellan Crow, 1 strike squad, 1 unit of Inceptors, 1 big unit. Yeah, 1 big unit of the Purifiers, 1 small unit of Purifiers, 2 small unit Purifiers, a Storm Raven gunship. Right when I was saying not good at killing the wagon, I would say that's not really the most effective at killing the wagon, but at least they can risk it. Right? They can threaten it a little bit now. A Cladius Assassin, and then 1 Vigilant Squad, which is I think those guys with the shotgun. Okay, I thought they were with the shields. All right, that's an interesting take right there. Big important mid-table playing with them. These guys, remember, a lot of people are worried, well, they're going to armor of contempt on me, and they try to slow play it too much. I think, again, this is one of those armies you have to get into and take away their asses because they're so elite. Understand that they can only Art of Contempt on 1 unit, and then everybody else is just kind of taking 3-up saves, and you're volume them down, and they're not usually really good at interacting with the transport type units, right? So can't risk your Ghazghkull, right? Chat's already going off like, yeah, exactly. The Castle and Chrome Purifier Squad is a very, very potent, threatening unit, and it could get you on Overwatch because how they get the reroll hits now on this. But with the existence of like a ship, typically you kind of lose the ground presence, and as you're kind of playing that mid table with your cheaper chaff units, once you give enough stuff forward to start cleaning up some of the Orc chaff units or delivering that early game damage, you can deliver that wall, which is what you see him typically doing when he's playing this army, right? And then so in 87, so it's actually one of his biggest wins, that one. So even though a lot of time more players like, I'm scared, on paper he can delete my most threatening units, it's on what terms is he finally getting to that threatening unit. If you've already annihilated half his army and he only has that Purifier Squad for the Gaz units, like, cool, well, I still have everything else left. Like we talked about, he still has the other boy unit. But if they get it off on you first, guys, right? Can't play too passive. Play past that midpoint, because if they get it off on you first, that Grey Knight army is picking you up horrific. So of course Lukas is just super effective because it's easier said than done to play with Orc against this with these Orcs. Almost like glass cannons, but not really. It's just because you can't let them disembark you. Then we have the World Eaters, Berserker Warband. So he has Demon Prince of Corn, Karn the Betrayer, double slaughterbound, one big, no, there's only a 10-man unit, right? Yeah, there's only a 10-man unit of Corn Zerkers, and then a Rhino. What's funny about these guys, right? This Rhino, I think it was overlooked a lot of times, and it's funny. I'll tell you a minor story. With my Zagra, I got close to one of these Rhinos, not knowing what it could do, and what it can do is allow the Berserkers to get out when someone gets in range of this Rhino. So guess what? I had to risk getting heroic almost. You know, it didn't happen, but it totally messed up my turn once they got out because I was hoping to wrap them. So that was early, but I'm just saying it's funny and overlooked. But know that when you're going into that matchup, if you want to wrap that, it's not happening like that. It's not going that way. Two of the minimum sized unit of Chaos Bombs, super efficient units. Scouting, advanced charge fast. They can get additional AP. Very good at skirmishing and like tagging your units. Very happy when you have Mandos in this case to stop them from kind of doing that on one flank. One unit of 8-bound. Two of the minimum sized unit of 8-bound, followed by two minimum sized unit of exalted 8-bound. That way, depending on the matchup, you know where to put their character. With a slaughterbound character, he is an 8-bound himself. But it's funny, he's like a little demon possessed monster. It's kind of hilarious, and he's very, very killing. Double Forge Fiends with ectoplasma cannons, and then double units of Ghazghkull. One of the interesting things is he doesnn't have the Warmongers, so he doesn't have his own infiltration. It's very, very helpful to us as an Orc player, because at 10 out of 10 games, I will just maximize my Mando squad to screen at least half the field and try to go first, lock them on the deployment damn near if you can on one side, and then on the other side you get in the fight and start interacting with them. And they're just too efficient. They're efficient, but they're too elite. So a lot of fight on death. CP management is super important in this one. So yeah, really great to see that. But remember, they can't really disbar your wagons either. And when I do the after action report, I'll show you how I kind of dealt with the World Eaters. But nonetheless, great job right there. World Eaters are a very, very popular army. You're going to see them. They're like 3 times more played than Orks last time I checked. So an 85-point win there by Lukas, just putting it in the bag. Then we have his 4th matchup, which is actually his lowest scoring matchup. Might have been the mission, not necessarily sure. Which is into Adeptus Mechanicus, which Mechanicus on paper, with the rules and everything you can do, is one of those hard matchup by Orcs. But then it comes down to, can the player pull it off, and is the right matchup. So Halo Creed is the actual most efficient version of the Admech right now. You get a bunch of like different command. People aren't sure, so I'm going to slightly tell you what I know about Admech to a certain degree, and I have played against this matchup. And not specifically this list, right? Halo Creed will allow you to get buffs like additional movement. You can give stuff additional toughness. You're going to have a lot of units. You're going to be able to pick multiple units for these buffs. You have Balustrade Claws for reroll hits. And then some of these units can, and as you can see, he actually only has one character, which is something I noticed as well, is that they don't need a lot of characters to operate as an army. So they can spend a lot of their points on units. And some of these units are actually really killing outside of needing a character. So I like to see it, at least with the rerolls. They have other buffs that they can do as well, but just to understand, it's almost like giving orders, but better. And better. Or giving tactics, but better. Sorry, Orc tactics. So we have 2 units of their basic Rangers, 1 Transport Dune Rider, pretty decent amount of small arms fire if it can pull an angle on you, as firing deck as well. So that's actually risky to Orcs. They have like twin length and such for a lot of shots. 1 unit of the Iron Starter Ballistari with the triple las cannons. These guys as well can bump up a toughness. Not too interesting on the Orc style, but their speed and their access to actually kind of being able to stay alive sometimes and not wanting to deliver on them could be threatening to your transports. But not so much that you should be so scared to stage up, to be honest. We have 2 units of the Sky Stalkers. Double units of these Cerberus Raiders. So these Cerberus Raiders, very, very annoying. So these guys are like mounted cavalry units that can scout forward. They move very quickly, very good for move blocking and getting in the way early for Orc kind of stuff, so they can try to hinder your battle wagons and such. But you do have Mandos. This is also why we're kind of telling you that Mandos are very important, at least if you're going out into the meta right now, which I'm sure you heard a lot, but you can see it in real time with a lot of these Orc players. And then he has the Sky Stalkers. So this is their jump packy type units. They come from Deep Strike. When they shoot, then they can move. So again, another style of screen, getting in the way, which is what they're good at doing. They're trying to hold you at arm's length and then shoot you with DACA and kind of utilize Oath. But the units that aren't trying to utilize Oath would be these Rust Stalker units. So think of them how we look at our flash kits, but these guys guys are for melee. So you know how we look at our flash kits and we're like, this unit doesn't need a character, really good for its point cost. It can be brought in a big unit. It can fight other infantry. That's exactly what's going on with these Ruststalkers. They're very fast, and then base like 8 movement or something. Then they can get a +2. Then if they're near infantry, they can get another +1 or 2 to their charge or something like that. So they're essentially moving like 12, and then they can get they can advance in charge, and then they can also just beat the crap out of you because they're sitting at T4. They can get up to T5. They have a good amount of punches. They have 2 different melee profiles. So one is damage 1, looking for dev wounds, and then the other one is anti-infantry 3+ -2, 2 damage for like 3 or 4 attacks on each unit, and they have 2 wounds. So very problematic anti-infantry style of units, and they're cheap. They're 150 points for that unit, even cheaper than our flash kits. So they can get big chunks of flesh out of you once they hold that arm's reach at you. We have triple disintegrators. Now with a battle wagon with triple disintegrators and the Iron Striders, now you have the wagon that's actually at risk. That being said, the fact that he brought so much killy kind of anti-tank, it looks like he doesn't have necessarily all this, and he has these big bricks, which are awesome, but they're not screens, right? So I do think that there's a chance that Troller did find a way. I don't know if the game's on War Games Live, let them know, have the chat, found a way to kind of utilize the Big Mac moving through them and delivering hella damage, but nonetheless, 78-point win. Great job to see. Animex is very about they're not a Xenos army, but you can almost consider them kind of like you're facing Orks or Ashrameltarm or other Xenos, where don't be so scared of their output that you don't stage on them. Because once they do kind of come out and start holding you back and they have too much stuff, they're willing to trade bodies for points to that degree, and you'll just kind of start to lose too many assets before you can push enough of them off. So yeah, so they're easier said than done though, for sure. So great job from him by that, and I'd like to, if that game was in War Games, I would definitely like to see. Then we go to his last game, which is the game we actually did watch on War Games Live, which was another Orc player. So Jonathan Serber, whoa, to this kid. If this kid wants to get in contact too, I'd love to hear your perspective as well. If you ever up till for it, great job on the game. A lot of pressure, I'm sure. It was a great game, entertaining to watch. Enjoyed it a lot. So let's go over this kid's list. And welcome to the Great Wall, Jonathan, if you have never heard of us. So we have a War Horde list with a Beast Boss with Ed Wappa's Kill Chopper, which is kind of funny. He's like, I'm not even going to fall back in charge. Just know that if I'm still here, I'm still krumpin in combat, anti-infantry, 4+. Then we have a Big Mac with Follow Me Lads, which was interesting. In this game, when you watch it on War Games Live, you would initially think that Gaz with the Big Mac are going with this Follow Me Lads unit, but he had it on the Knobs unit. So not sure if that does something he did every game or recommend for everybody, but it very much looked like that's exactly what he did in this game versus Lucas. Then he has a Big Mac with shock attack guns that he had with tank busters, 1 unit of Basnikrat, a Ghazghkull Thraka that didn't have the Big Mac in this case, and then he had a Warboss with, what was the other Warboss with? I forgot the other Warboss. And then Zagra War Sniper. Or did that? Oh no, actually no, he did. I'm lying. He had the Big Mac with Ghazghkull, but he had he confused me. He had a Uftak. I'm pretty sure this is Warboss with the knob. So pardon me, guys. I just remembered what happened in the game. And then a Zagra Wartsnaga, which was interesting because you guys know I'm a big Zod fan. So when you're looking at the difference between this and Lucas's list, one of the big things you can see is he doesn't have the double big bricks of Boyz. Instead, he has Zod, and he has a character for his tank busters, unlike Lucas, where he has one kind of a side of them and then another unit of tank bust. But both of them brought that beast beat that beast boss and beast snagger, of course. Love that unit. 1 unit of 20 boys, 3 trucks, no battle wagon, which is the inverse, right? This is what I really like to see, is these are 2 very efficient styles and archetypes of orcs that were very similar yet very different. And it was very nice to see them both being played and make it to the top. 2 units of flash kits. Of course, one of those would be SWAT teamed with the knobs, for example, and then the other one would be SWAT teamed with the tank busters to shoot the firing deck. 1 unit of minimum size Gretchen, a big unit of Gretchen for Zagra, and then 1 unit of Mandos, 1 unit of 5 knobs. Like I said, that he did have the war boss. I was tripping when I said he didn't. He was just using his Uftak character. I don't know why I went over my head like that. And then 2 units of Storm Boys and 1 unit of Tank Boys, like I said earlier. So they both said they were really big fans of the Storm Boys, which were actually funny in this matchup. They ended up fighting it out all over Lucas's home objective. Like some Grots and some Storm Boys started getting into this big fight. So as for this game, it was very much about how do I say that? I don't want to break it down word play by play, but ultimately what was going on here was as Jonathan had the top of turn, the mission was terraform, and they started to terraform. He was utilizing his Snickrat and little trucks. He was creeping up with Zod. He was pretty much just trying to get a pounce jump on him, knowing that he can kind of play the secondary a little bit back. And Lucas was bottom of turn, so because of the mission, Lucas was kind of hurried, and he said, "Well, in turn 2, I'm definitely going to wall." And I think that is very important because how fast these units are, you can actually cover that mid-table distance. You see it in real time. But also, whenever it's this kind of melee on melee, we can both fight matchup. Taking the first tooth, the first chunk of flesh out of the enemy is very, very, very important. Now, what was very interesting to see, and this is why I said it's one of the greatest games you'll ever see, is because on the go turn at the bottom of turn 2, when Luca comes out and he presses "Here we go," and he comes out and fights with Gaz, it's like I think it was like a 6-inch charge, and then he had to get like a 5 on the, no, he had to get like a 5 or a 6-inch, I think it was 5 or 6-inch charge onto, it was like a 5 on the truck and some multiple units he was fighting with his Gaz unit, and he failed it. Then he re-rolled it and he failed it again. He rolled like a 3 into a Snake Eyes. It was like some tremendous, chat saying as a 4-inch charge, so I know it was like a 4 or 5. It was a very, very, very reliable charge, and he failed it on the go turn in the finals into the enemy. Huge deal. But the other unit that Lucas has was able to actually make contact with Zagrat's unit that had kind of creeped out of the deployment zone, and he ended up just cleaning that unit up. Now, Jonathan did kind of say, "Hey, well, I can heroic here with Gaz's unit," which is kind of still an interesting thing to do a lot of the time for protecting Zod's unit from just simply getting tagged outside of the wall. But that's only if Gaz can completely clean that unit up in response. But another 20-man unit of Boyz that has a Painboy out, Jonathan's 20 Boyz can't do that outside of the wall and risk being stuck in combat with that. So he chooses not to heroic. So Luca ends up destroying that on the bottom of turn 2, a Zod unit and just some Mandos, but then he's standing kind of in the open, which is very interesting. And at this point, a lot of people in the chat were most likely just saying game's over, it's done. But then they continued, right? So in response, turn 3, Jonathan calls his WAAAGH. The interesting part here is people can already predict this. At the end of this turn, at the end of Jonathan's turn, he's still gonna have his WAAAGH up defensively, and Luca's not gonna have any on his go turn. So he makes a bunch of defensive kind of maneuvers and decides to just kill what he can, which is the 20-man unit of Boyz. There are some ideas and contentions. You let me know in chat and Rewatch Gang. I do want to know what you guys think. Not from like we know better, right? We're side character. We're hindsight 2020, and we're in the back seat. None of us are saying we could perform any better. So there's no criticism of Jonathan. It was just a nice conversation having in chat where he chose not to charge Gaz's unit. The unit that had failed a charge, he had not charged it with a Snagga Boyz. The idea here is that then Gaz could interrupt, end up getting free kills and get some pylons out of there, possibly get closer to the enemy and get a free trade out of there. Or Jonathan could allow that, fought on death with that Snagga unit, and try to kill at least 10 of those Boyz right off the jump. So hindsight 2020, unsure what you guys think is the right play there. I want to see what Chad has to say about that. But the other things that were going on here was when the Gaz unit went into the 20 Boyz with the Pain Boss, they one-shot that 20-man unit of Boyz, but the fight on death happened, of course. And it responded with Jonathan losing his entire Gaz unit. And the Painboy with the dirty syringe, got Makari with his dev mortal wound at the end. So pretty crazy there how that ended up playing out. So then the game was on, right? Even though Luca has failed a 4-inch charge on the go turn at the bottom of turn 2, and the enemy now has a wall initiative to get into him because of how the game goes, how dice swing, how Orks matchups are pretty chaotic. There's another swing in that direction. So now he was out a Gaz going into that turn, and the scores were pretty locked up, right? People are not necessarily sure of what's happening going to go in there, but Luca, because he was able to acquire an assassinate here, and they both tie going into prime secondary, but he was able to get an assassinate and no prisoners from that. His kind of go turn is ready to go turn. It meant that on the Jonathan's return, even though he was able to put a lot of secondaries up, he had already lost kind of a lot of stuff. And it's kind of at that point, as they in the chorus, like I'm not saying hindsight's 2020. As we've seen from Jonathan's tech and Jonathan's list, intentionality, not Jonathan, sorry, Lucas. Lucas' list intentionally is that the mech with the Tankbuster still being around to play late game and his patience, 10-man units of beast snag. I think were also very important to him holding this game because though Gaz went forward and the Snaggers went, I mean, the Zod went the other Snagger, the Boyz went forward and Gaz went forward, and he staged up all his other vehicles and transports. Later for turn 3, 4, he still had his tank busters they were able to play. They were able to still shoot from within the trucks, getting the buff from the mech, so they were still interacting and, you know, helpful throughout the whole game. And in the alternate case for Jonathan's tank busters, because in this matchup there were no ideal things for him to come shoot at, and the aggression that Luca had put on him, he wasn't able to deliver his favorite firing lanes. Then the tank busters kind of felt a little bit more lackluster there as well, right? These are just minor critiques that we're talking about the difference between these units. The other difference, as someone who's a huge Ghazghkull Wartsnaga lover, is that when you don't have the wagon, this is what you risk from some fast armies. For example, if you play against World Eaters and they're able to tag either the back end of one of your Zod units with one of their scouting, very fast type of units, or get a Goremonger to charge you, not interact with Zod too much, they can kind of mess up Zod into that degree. So you are paying for a cheaper unit to do a similar kind of thing to what a 20-man unit of Boyz would do. But this is the difference that you're paying for, is that if you pay for the wagon, you're paying the premium of I'm very defensive and compact, and I'm not that much slower than Zod, and I'm even more durable and killy when it's that go turn. So very interesting to see that being played in real time as someone who's a big Zod lover. These are just critiques of an Orc player that's looking at this as someone who likes both lists a lot, and each one of them has a tech that I like a lot. One has the mobile tank buster bunker mobile, the other one has Ghazghkull Wartsnaga, for example, but then both of them have Gaz, both of them have Big Mechs, both of them has Beast Snagga Boyz, both of them have Mandos, right? Things that I think Orcs community can kind of conceal on that is very important and interesting. So great job there. Of course, check out War Games Live. Leave a like here and there if you guys think we're doing a good job. And it's Luca. If you see this, let's give a shout out. Let's get a chat. If not, great job you get. Thanks for getting the Orcs another win. Whoa! Now let's look at what the live gets have got to say about. Oh, there's other cool big moments too in the game, but that's why you should watch it. A lot of other failed charges and fights for the home objective that were going on from Luca, and you know, even Jonathan, he failed some heroics. There was a lot of big moments on that game. It was very exciting to watch, even me covering it to that degree. And when I think still I revealed some big moments, was still worth watching, because as an Orc player, you get to see Mandos getting involved, you see Storm Boys getting involved, you see trucks, you see wagons running around trying to charge people, which was of course a late game issue. People underestimate how much of an issue. It's not exactly as scary as a like Land Raider Redeemer late game, but it is scary at late game, and that's what was happening there. The battle wagon was interacting. Such a great game. So I definitely highly recommend people go at least watch it. Find the timestamps at least on, like I said, bottom of 2 to watch the go turn and really get some good information, or just watch the deployment as well. So shout out to Dave's Gets. That was awesome to see. Another thing to check out is our sponsor, the Baron of Dice. They make high quality custom dice. If you enjoy our content and want to show some love, check out the Baron of Dice custom dice, including Wall Tactics official dice. To support us, use our discount code in the description for 5% off, because nobody likes taxes. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!